Welcome back to Our Chaotic Cauldron. I am Tara Webb.
And I'm Alyssa Lilly.
And how auspicious that we are recording the topic Kronos, the deity, I guess you could say, the primordial being Kronos, on daylight savings. And, it's coming out this week.
This crazy jump in time.
Yeah, very much so. And Kronos is fascinating because there's multiple ways to spell Kronos and multiple meanings behind the spellings of Kronos.
I know, I looked up I did research for this episode and looked up I looked up Kronos, which is totally different.
With a U.S.?
Yes.
But did you get anything when you found U.S.?
Yeah, it's a whole different person. That is not a god of time, but I believe a titan. Let me look.
But it's the same thing because it comes from the same thing.
Yeah, but there was nothing in it that talked about time.
Yeah, because that's the Latin spelling. So he.
So this is ancient Greek religion, the leader and youngest of the first generation of Titans, descendants of primordial Gaia and Uranus, Father Sky. But I don't know. I was reading a bunch of stuff about him, and there was nothing about being related to time at all. And so I was like, am I looking at the wrong person?
So, no, it's the same. It's just the different spellings. So there's Kronos, Khronos, or Kronos, and then Kronos with a CH, and then Kronos with a CHRONUS, and then I'm sure there's CR, and that's just how they did
the one I looked up was CRONUS.
And it was essentially the primordial god of time. Because it also has the Titan down here as the father time. Titan Kronos, father time.
Fascinating.
The Orphics merged Kronos with the creator god Phanes, I guess, and equated him with the Titan Ophion. So he's equivalent to the Phoenician cosmogony. That's an interesting word. Cosmogony?
Cosmogony? Yeah, that's an interesting word.
Was probably Olam, eternal time, whose name is written Olumus in Greek transcripts, which I feel like Olumus comes also, I think of like a crystal ball. What is that? Like Olo? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know what you're thinking of. No.
I'm going to have to look up.
All I can see for some reason is ojos, which is eyes in Spanish.
Because I feel like Olohoros or something. I thought it had to do with divination.
What is it? Is it another word for orb?
Maybe. But the one that's coming up is Olam in Phoenician is eternal time, whose name is written as that way. I feel like O-U, how am I going to see it in my head? O-U-L-O-U-R-O-U-S or something is how my mind sees this word. Don't even know if that exists, but I feel like it does.
So I'm going to look it up and see if anything comes up.
Because I feel like, it also goes back to hour, H-O-U-R, and then hour, like, a time glass, an hourglass.
Hourglass. You guys are probably going to hear my keyboard. It's fine. We're just chilling in my office today.
Yeah, so because it makes me think of etymology behind hourglass, which is in time.
It does. I don't see anything about it, but I feel like that we'll put a pin in that.
It's a massive.
You always get me on these rabbit holes.
Yeah. Okay. So, he basically came, like you said, one of the original Titans. So in this book, our, Encyclopedia of Spirits.
We need a theme song for this.
We do. Da, da, da. There's the multiple spellings of him as well in here. Married his sister Ray, although in the one I have, he is connected with Ankh, which we then can see as...
Anunk? Ankh,
which I think of, and we mentioned this in the past. I think of that as like, because the Ankh of which you hold and was what Anubis held, and this is where we'll be talking about later on past lives in Egypt, because like we had a detour on that. But Anubis was holding an Ankh, which is very similar to the cross, just without the little weehoo at the top. I don't know what that's called.
The weehoo. I love that. I've never heard that rainbow.
You're gonna sing go weehoo. Because that's kind of what the cross is. And I don't want to go another tangent because I was about to look up what the Ankh meant, and I was like, no, that's another tangent. So that's what she makes me think of. Because I don't remember what her name means though. But yeah, so
it means inevitability.
Yes, right? That's right. Yes. So that's like the primordial, the ones who were there first. That basically it had to they had to exist for things to actually happen. I have a lot of
side note. Ankh is the meaning of life, or the symbol of life,
which is close to like everything else with inevitability and all the things that basically came with that.
It's so fascinating when you go on these tangents, just all of the parallels that you see across the world and how they interpreted things.
So what is the difference between Kronos, Cronus, and Kronos, Kronos?
Those are the confusion I had.
Yes. Kronos with a K, the first one, is also called Kronos with a C and the U with S, and is Saturn in Roman mythology and is the Titan father of Zeus, Jupiter, right? We talked in an episode that came out with Cupid about the different, names with Greek and Roman and all that stuff. The Greek god of time is Kronos, Chronos, who is a primordial form of Kronos with the K. And most elders were worshipped as gods, so it makes sense that Kronos is the same as Kronos. So basically, it's like this whole shift of just the way they're spelled. And it's interesting because when looking at this one, there's apparently a Kronos moment, like a moment in time that's Kronos. And this refers to like chronological. There was a way that they said it that made sense. Yeah, well, actually, there you go, chronological. Look at me. Because it's spelled chronological, Kronos. Kronos, well, here's another one for you. Kronos, it was the son of Gaia. Yeah. It says Uranus here, but in here it says Oronos, and there's once again that word in Greek mythology. So I'm going to actually send that to Alyssa as I continue to read this to look that up and see what that means.
Let's do it. We'll tag team.
Yeah. And his wife was a Titaness Rhea, which is, that's all in the Roman Greek area, somewhat, because it's all like shifting and different. Now, Keros also comes from the Greeks. So we've talked, and I don't remember what episode this is. We've talked in the past about, actually, that was actually with Cupid as well. How the brotherly love, eros, and Greek within the Bible, how that can be brotherly love. And there's also the other word for love, and like the way they shifted around because the Bible was originally written in Greek and all this kind of stuff. So, there's another word for time. It's also in the Bible as well, in Greek, and it's kairos, Kairos. And that is a fleeting moment. It's like trying to be in the present moment. Versus chronological, Kronos, time. This is in the moment. And it's not a god. Well, no. It's been seen as like a statue or like a man of that kind of thing. But Kronos is measured. It's the linear movement. And Kairos is like the time of festivals or the time of being young. It's just a very much present feeling. And it can't be controlled or possessed. Which I don't think time can in general, but we do have an ability to like somewhat track time, at least in like our little human minds. Whereas like those fleeting moments,
our perception of time,
those fleeting moments is like 2 seconds ago I was talking about that and I can't go back to that, right? It's like that literally being in that present moment and going back and forth, which is fascinating. Did you find the or
by the way? Oranos, or however you say that, is literally means sky or heaven.
Yeah, okay.
God of the heavens, son and husband of Gaia, and father of the Titans.
So that's probably what I'm thinking of is sphere, because he's of the heavens, and that's if you look at flat Earth or look at like what the Greeks also thought about, it's having the dome. He was part of that dome, and the dome goes into like the sphere, and the sphere is like, you know, with oracles. I think of like those connections as well with and Orpheus. That's probably also the word.
Works. Morpheus.
Orpheus.
Just following your trail, yes. I get it.
Can you look at what Orpheus means? Because I think that there's Morpheus and Orpheus. And so this might be like another tangent for an episode.
Orpheus makes me think of Orpheus. I don't know if that's going to be a great one.
Orpheus, yeah. But like, because it makes you think of like the dome, which is the father sky. And I'm trying to find him in here just briefly because I enjoy
Orpheus in Greek mythology was a Thracian bard, legendary musician and prophet.
Well, then never mind. Yep, here's Orpheus.
Fun facts
of music. I mean, yeah, he's the god of music in some ways.
I didn't know that was a thing. More on that later.
Well, I was also thinking like that was also Dionysus, but I guess Dionysus was like partying and of art and like theatre.
Say that again.
Theatre. Theatre. Yeah, I mean, Kronos. There's a lot about Kronos in here. But what's fascinating is he supposedly ate his children, and that's why Zeus killed him. Because he didn't want to, or like he went inside of him and like killed him coming out or something like that. Okay, although wait, I just found it. Although children's mythology books can consistently portray Kronos as a baby swallowing monster, thank you. The era he presided over before he was overthrown is known in the Golden Age. Kronos is the Lord of Time. He's consistently benevolent and generous toward people, if not toward his own offspring.
I'm very confused. It's very contradicting there.
So, eating your children's a good thing? No?
What? Yeah, what happened from point A to point B? How did we get there?
He remains a powerful deity with potent connections who may be invoked for any sort of assistance. Kronos or Kronos may or may not be the same spirit. And then one has an H and one doesn't. And I'll see back here.
I don't know that I would want to personally invoke that, but I will learn about you.
Think about invoking time, though. Like invoking the power of time to be able to... I don't know. What would you need that for? Because there's certain things I'm hesitant like that. I don't.
If it involves somebody eating their children, I want nothing to do with it.
Okay, and here's this word again.
What'd you do with invoking time?
Orphic.
What word?
The
what
O-R,
is with these?
The OR thing. So this is where Kronos, and that Kronos was married to, I'm gonna have to look up her name. Ankh. Yeah. Ankh.
That's what I'm going with.
And so this part, Kronos with a KH, is Orphic, Lord of Time, Gnostic spirit of time. And there's Gnostic again that we talked about previously. I love how all of this is just like tying together. He turns the wheels of the zodiac. That's fascinating. I didn't know he would.
Well, that was the interpretation of time.
The sky, yeah, but he's turning this because the sky is the zodiac in a sense.
Well, and that's what I mean. That's how they used to tell time, right? That's how they would interpret years or changing of seasons.
I mean, there are so many circles.
Did I just make that up?
No, you're correct. I just found a little tangent. Like there are so many circles of things. So, like even the sundial is a circle. And you measure it as it goes around, right? And like the there's a word for like the crystal ball being like or something is what it keeps coming back to my mind.
Orb is all I think of when you say
orb, and not the OU that we had earlier. He emerges from the primordial void to birth the world together with his consort that we mentioned, that I can't pronounce her name. And here's what's interesting: in this one, Kronos is depicted with a serpentine body and 3 heads: bull, lion, and man.
Where have I heard that before? So it looked like a snake serpents. Body.
Serpents are a
snake
thing.
Body.
Yeah.
With a what head?
I had a little tangent of serpents in my head. Man, bull, and lion.
That's a fascinating... Do they have arms? Like, I'm just trying to visualize what the fuck.
Well, there's something else that I read at one point that was he was more of a what's the word? It's like a C, a being that is
centaur,
chimera.
Oh, okay, that's not okay.
Yeah, so it's like I saw a picture or like something that was described of him being more of a chimera, where it was like the head of a man, the body of a lion, he had bull horns and like a tail. So like that kind of thing, maybe.
Fascinating.
Also, don't know.
Up for interpretation, really.
Well, I think it's also fascinating looking at the original ones that were here too, the primordial beings and like what they actually were. Because, I mean, yes, time, that makes total sense. What were the 3 that we said he came from? Do you remember? Like the 3 that arrived. He was one of the original 3 that arrived.
That would be... I'm looking 1 second. Oh, no. Should have researched the right one.
I have it up here.
Okay, so Zas is the primordial form of Zeus.
Mm-hmm. So I guess I didn't send you this one, Alyssa. It's the primordial gods, and there's a lot of them.
No, you did not send me that one.
Because the one I sent Alyssa was a click from that.
Because I looked up the wrong person.
No, but like it was like a click from that. So like you click on Kronos time, and it sends you to the one I sent Alyssa. Versus, I'm just going to show you my phone. Has all of these, for example, of like all the different ones that plus more, and you know what? I'm going to click on her name.
Chaos was one, right?
Her translation is necessity. Ananke is I think how you pronounce it. Kronos time, Eros procreation. That's where we also talked about the original 3 was with Eros.
Mm-hmm.
But there's even more here. Gaia, Earth, Hemera, day, Nyx, night, Oceanus, water, Aurea. There's the O-U-R thing again. Aurea, I feel like that's a sign. Mountains, Pontus, sea, Tetis, which is nursing. And that's fascinating. Because you're giving life, in a sense, like your nourishment. Thalassa, sea, and Uranus, sky. But there's even more. That was just a quick list.
Chaos is usually described as feminine. I feel like we're going on lots of tangents here, but I'm really curious about chaos. Because Uranus... The word chaos in Greek meant chasm. Fascinating.
So yeah, this is what I'm thinking of is Uranus, which is Oronos. There's so many words. The protogenos of the solid dome of heaven. The dome. Whose form stretched from one horizon to the other. He sprang forth from Gaia, the earth, at the beginning of creation. Later, his son Kronos seized and castrated him. Like, just why? As he descended to consort with Mother Earth. Like, why?
Why not, is the question, Tara. Why not?
Apparently.
You know, these stories are always so uplifting.
And so sexual, too. If it's not the gods...
I feel like we had a lot of sexual repression or something during these interpretations.
Well, I mean, I guess we can think about, like, you know, there was a lot of just releasing and, like, being able to just be your human self, in a sense. Almost, like, so intent. You know, I can't think of the word they say, like, you know, you're not an animal. Don't be... So primal, yeah, like primal instinct. And this would have been a time when they would have been extremely primal, right? Especially think of like how the Romans just like their soldiers were and that kind of thing.
Well, now it's a kink these days.
It is. It is. Perceived in some ways too, depending on which one we're specifically talking about.
Yes.
And then like, I guess it depends because the Romans took over from the Greek, I think. And then you think of like the Romans then becoming Christians. And that's when like a lot of things were like, we have to have more purity mindset, like not early on either. Like this is, many years after the Christians. They weren't even called that really back then because they were just on a mission for Jesus. Like they didn't have a Bible in front of them. They had the old text that were from the Jews and that kind of thing. So it wasn't even like there was this huge
fully birthed idea. Yeah.
I actually don't know when the first word Christian came out from that, and that's another tangent.
Yeah, that's a whole onion. We have lots of onions today.
We have. So I wanted to tie this into because, well, obviously we're in. What are we in? It's time change.
We are in time change. As you can see, we're delirious from it. It's messed with me so bad.
Yeah. I don't enjoy the spring one. I enjoy the original, but I am for them supposedly keeping one just because I don't like the back and forth. Our bodies don't need the back and forth.
Yeah, please just keep one. I like consistency. This change, I mean, even fall back, like yes, it's nicer because you gain an hour. It still messes with my sleep schedule and my routine and my energy levels because I basically have to reset.
Okay, so it started, I didn't actually know this, that Germany was the first to adopt daylight savings time during World War I as a way to conserve fuel.
How does that conserve fuel?
So by using the sun as more, because the sun is out longer, you're using less fuel for the lights inside, the candles, the gas, all that kind of things to like, as far as like keeping light.
Okay.
Even like washing clothes because you're supposed to do it like more, you'd have more time during the sun hours and that kind of stuff. And that was during 1916. Rest of Europe followed after. The United States didn't adopt it until 1918, and it was abolished after World War I because they didn't like it. And then 1942, Franklin Roosevelt instituted a year-round daylight savings time, which he called wartime. So I'm guessing that was like essentially kind of what we want to go to now is to have just one time. And that lasted until 1945. And then the U.S. Established the Uniform Time Act of 1966, which mandated standard time across the country within established time zones. It didn't mean that people had to do it. States could exempt themselves, and the two that have are, I know it's Arizona. I don't know if it's Alaska or Hawaii.
I was going to say Arizona is one.
Oh, Hawaii. It's Hawaii.
Yeah.
So those two have, and they've exempted. But the whole thing was that the rule was that it would start on one day and end on the next day. And so if you were going to do the daylight savings, you had to do it on those days. It couldn't just be other days. And apparently it used to be October, and then they extended it to November, which allowed, of course, the change was advocated in part to allow children to go trick-or-treating in more daylight. So there's
fascinating, but okay.
There's this whole thing about like trying to change it, like we said, back to one that I think, I could be wrong. I think I can't think of his name right now. The president before Biden. Trump. I had Titan in my head. Yeah, I had Titan in my head.
I mean, you don't need to remember that name. It's fine.
No, but like for whatever reason, I was trying to find the T for Trump, and Titan was just playing over and over in my head. I think he originally started the idea of like wanting to get back, and then Biden implemented it more, or is trying to implement it more. And it's still like, I think it went through the House and now it has to go through the Senate or vice versa. But what I wanted to know was Greenwich Mean Time. like kind of where the time originally started. Because like Alyssa said, we started off with the sun, moon, stars, tracking it with a sundial.
They were essentially tracking the rotation of us around.
I spilled that all over my book. That was fabulous.
Oh no.
I know. So Greenwich Mean Time. Greenwich Mean Time is a yearly average or the mean of time each day when the sun crosses the prime meridian at the Royal Observatory, Greenwich. And I'm sorry, but when I read this, all I think is colonialism. Anyways, because it's like focusing so much on this, and they like were so excited for it because it did start in that time, supposedly, like that was the place it started, and then they kept that as like the original time because that's where it affected the most people. And I'm like, bullshit. I call bullshit. But like this was, what year was this? In 1972, from 1884 to 1972. So I mean, like, okay. Each day measured by a clock has the same length, equal to the average length of a solar day. And so they actually used to measure it by solar days. I think from what I understood was like from the middle of the day, 12, to the next middle of the day. Whereas now it's from midnight to midnight.
Yeah, that's
because
fascinating.
It used to actually have 1 through 24, which I actually like. And that's how military time is 1 through 24, but also...
I was going to say, do we not have 1 through 24 now?
We do. It's just not commonly used. It's mostly 1 through 12. And like every watch face you see is 1 through 12.
People when I give military time, they look at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah, and it makes sense because, you can say, I need you to report here at 8 o'clock. And then someone's like, well, I'm here at 8 p.m. And it's like 800, versus 2000 or, whatever. So actually, GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, has been replaced with Coordinated Universal Time.
UTC,
I guess to make it more accepting. But I think it's so cool. It wasn't until the invention of the pendulum clock. Like there's divination right there. Using a pendulum clock to go around. And that also a lot of...
I was like, isn't that where watches and things like in clocks originated was pendulum clocks? I'm pretty sure.
And the sailors used the...
I don't think pendulum
the Greenwich
clocks
Mean Time,
like
because there were tables of lunar distance data based on observation. This data enabled navigators to find their position at sea because it helped them with the longitude and latitude of things. And so it was able to actually track where it was like the original GPS, track where they were, because they somewhat did it with the moon and stars and that kind of thing. But as we know, that changes. It doesn't just stay the same.
Yeah.
Anyways. I will not go on my tangent.
It's okay if you do.
And then like railways is how it became standard in UK, because they had people who would be like, there is, Bristol Mean Time, which is 10 minutes behind Greenwich Mean Time, and then Cardiff Mean Time, which is 13 behind. So you could say like, I'm going to be there at 1:15, and they'd be like, you were 25 minutes late, because to them that would have been the wrong time. And so that's where the time zones...
You know what I'll...
Go ahead.
We are on one today. It's fine. This really makes me think of Kronos, of how his name is just in different places and different interpretations. And we have all these different time zones that are all interpreted differently. It's just so many ways to interpret and try to perceive time that they can't even get his name consistent.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Plus the different types of time in the sense of like timelines too. Like little snakes out here. So that's how it became was the railway time. Essentially to make sure things were more standard, international. And the late 19th century was when 72% of the world's commerce depended on sea charts, which used Greenwich Mean Time, the prime meridian, that kind of stuff. And then the air people used it. Lots of people used it.
The air people?
Like pilots and people who were doing that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But it says airy transit circle telescope became the telescope that would define the prime meridian. So I said air people because it's airy.
You said, I literally pictured people with wings. I was like, what did this happen?
It's air people. It's air flying. Like little fairies. What's really cool, I'm going to show a picture of this. It's like, that's kind of what, I'm really close to the mic. That's what the 24 hours would have. And I think that actually this is still there. Yeah, it was 1 through 24, and so it would go around the entire thing. I'm curious how you would then track the minutes. Because we track the minutes with 12.
Did they get down? I guess the question would be is when did they start tracking minutes? Because I don't know that minutes. I don't think.
I mean, you do still see the minutes here because 2 is 5, 10 is 4. Oh, that hurts my brain. 15 is 6. So they do still have the minutes around it. It's just not at the typical times that we're used to seeing it. Which would be how we multiply by 5 to get 60. Fascinating.
Also, who landed on 60? What a interesting number to land on.
And I think we've talked before about how amazing it would be if we actually shifted back to tracking like around the lunar cycle, kind of, a fab women cycle, like 28-day thing, because it would mean like every single month would be equal. We add the extra month in there for 13 months, like it originally
seasons would be shifting. Yeah,
seasons would be shifting that way. The days would still be, 365 in some senses, and you would feel more in track. And then like even just the stupid idea of how September is that the actual number, sept, oct, is, 10, not 8. Like those kinds of things.
It's so strange.
It is.
I don't know who. Yeah.
Well, we do know who.
We do know who, but I don't understand the logic. Yeah.
They're stupid. And I actually wonder if even then when they change, because there's a time in, I don't remember the actual year, when you can go back and essentially half the month is gone, because that's when they adopted the new calendar of the Caesar and that kind of thing. Yeah. And so I actually do wonder if maybe they did stay with 13 months and then it got erased, or if that's when they erased the 13th month. I do not know the year for that though.
So I want to go back to your question.
Which one?
Bothering me. I know there's a lot. If you could invoke time, what would you invoke time for?
That's a very early question.
I know. I keep circling back in my brain, like, why would I invoke time? I mean, I guess we kind of do that when we tap into past lives and higher self work.
Yeah, because then you're also tapping into, if you want to look at past lives, and then like looking at weavings of time, and like a Seder magic, yeah. And looking at Akashic records, because Akashic is also time/ether, which is space. I still haven't wrapped
my brain around what that, like, I know what Akashic records are, but my brain, I haven't tapped into that because my brain just can't fathom.
It's a lot. It's like these files that are almost accessed from a collective perspective over the entire duration of the universe.
That's just so hard to wrap your mind around. Mm-hmm. It makes sense, but just I don't know. It just, my brain, there's a block there. That's a future me problem.
Future me.
That's a future me problem.
Time-wise, future Alyssa. Yeah. I don't know. So, invoking Kronos, I also feel like that's massive energy too. Like
that is.
But I don't feel the same about Gaia, even though that's also a Titan. Kronos just feels even more intense.
I feel like Kronos feels very, it feels very chaotic. Look at all these time zones and these different ways of interpreting time and how it's morphed and people trying to understand and harness this energy.
Chaotic? What if it wasn't originally that chaotic and it was just, you succumb to it almost. It's like it's just not that big of a deal. Whereas we're trying
I think
to
a lot of
it.
The way that it's morphed now is to monopolize and to make money and capitalize off of time versus like, what's the point of seconds, truly, other than to clock in and out and collect your hours at work, right? What is the point of tracking everything down to the millisecond? Like, what is the point? I mean, in science, yes, there are some extra. I could see some science, like if you're doing some scientific experiments, okay, I could see that. But as the way that we use it now, it makes no sense to me why we need to even have our clocks go to the second. I say as we're recording this on a video that we use time to edit and modify and create reels. What'd you find?
What'd you find? The word I was trying to say, Orbros. But that wasn't on my head. It just kind of came to me. Is the ancient symbol depicting a serpent or a dragon eating its own tail.
Yes. Okay.
See?
Yes. I'm there now. I couldn't find it. I was looking up and I was not finding anything.
Because I wasn't spelling it correctly, and then I just remembered it. It's the cyclical renewal cycle of life, death, and rebirth. It's the tail is phallic and the mouth is yonic. Yonic?
Is that the word? It's not yonic. It's
yonic. Yonic?
What's the word? It's not.
What?
Yonic isn't the word. Oh, that's going to drive me
nuts. What it says is Y-O-N-I-C. Yonic. Like, that's a weird way to say that.
There's a word. I've looked this up before because I've always been curious if there was a feminine version for phallic. And I know that there is. That's going to drive me. That's a tangent for...
Okay, and see, this is where I think... So our next cauldron was going to be about mermaids. But I think, especially since we're going to record an episode about past lives in Egypt... I'm actually looking when that comes out. Yeah. April will actually be about... I hope Alyssa's okay with this, will actually be about Ouroboros and like Egyptian and Osiris and Ankh and like Anubis.
Unacceptable. Absolutely
and Osiris.
Not. I'm just kidding.
I already said Osiris. Yeah. That's a massive area. Like, not that we can cover all of Egypt in one thing. I think we'll choose one specific, and maybe it is Ouroboros because this has been playing. So this is kind of what, if you go to our Weaving Magic podcast, we talked about divination and seeing signs and that kind of thing. That is an episode that will actually be coming out next week. Check that out. Where you see signs and they're just popping up and they're showing you things. And this is one of those things. Ouroboros, hourglass, OUR, whatever it was. There was even more than I can't even think. But if you like listen back to this episode, it constantly kept like just being there. No matter what we found was constantly there. That is a sign.
We're going to follow that. Yeah, we're going to follow that.
We're going to abandon mermaids at the moment.
We'll come back to you, mermaids, or maybe we'll do a bonus. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
We might. We've been on a recording frenzy of just excited creative energy and that kind of stuff. I'm going to pause here because I'm about to go down this huge rabbit hole that we'll be going down later.
Yeah, so we've established Kronos in the chaos of time, the chaos that we've created.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's something that we're missing with him, though, because...
I know. That's why I haven't felt like a good end. There's something...
He was thrown into Tartarus, and then Zeus felt bad for him and moved him over to the Elysian fields. And I feel like maybe it's the fact that people have tried to contain this idea of him and make it so well known, but never could. And so we feel like there's a lack of something there.
Oof. Who knew that lack was going to be a deep...
I mean, because we're searching for it constantly. And, truly, there are those who have, doctorates in mythology and doctorates in folklore and that kind of thing and could totally have more answers around this with us. I would love to have more books about researching this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And seeing where it goes around. But for right now, Kronos... being chronological order, a Titan, and primordial, and essentially just one of the beginning things that you just can't get rid of. Like, it's just...
inevitable.
You can't control it. Yeah, inevitable, which is also a necessity of his partner. We're repeating all of it because it feels as if there's no end. And here's the end.
It's a repeating cycle.
It is. And so maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the point of Kronos. It never ends. Time never ends.